What's up, guys? Welcome to the first animal life drawing class that I am doing here. So we're going to jump it off by teaching cats. Cats are something that I know. I have cats, so it's just kind of a familiar topic to me. And we're going to go over this similar to if you've done any of my beginning figure drawing videos, where we're going to break this down. We're going to look at anatomy, and then we're going to break it down by body part, which today we're going to focus on the head. But taking just a quick glance at this scale here, we want to always, when we're thinking about drawing something realistically, which should always be our first approach, to learn how to draw something real, which will help us then later draw something exaggerated or cartoony. You always want to start from the basics, start from the fundamentals. So understanding what's inside is important. So why do we need to know what's underneath? The structure underneath is kind of like the structure of a building. It's what holds us together. So just like we looked at the skeleton of a human, and you can see certain things of like the skull shape and the rib cage, and we know that that is kind of helping our body contort into the shape that it is, right? Our skeleton kind of tells us what we look like. Same with our muscle structure. Here we can look at, since we're just looking at the head for the most part today, if we zoom in on this skull, we can see that we kind of have, I guess, what we could best describe as an oval shape or like a football shape for the skull. So this is going to come into play here when we're thinking about the simple shapes that we're going to build our structure on. So a couple key things to notice here obviously are the ears, because they're very flexible and bendable. They don't have any bone structure in them. So we're not thinking about bones when we're thinking about the ear. We know that they're sitting on top of that structure. Next, similar to humans, just like we have the nose here, it goes out further than the skeleton, right? Because it's a cartilage thing. Our noses, if we look at a skull, we don't actually have, the bridge of our nose. We don't have the unique nose shape that comes out from the bone. It's cartilage which holds our nose together, which is what gives our nose some of that more semi-flexibility than bone. Similar to cats, they don't have as elongated of a nose as we do, or a dog does, but it still protrudes off from the skull shape. Now, another thing that we can notice, and this kind of comes into play as the drawing, is that we get this really flat facing front, at least with this style of house cat here. Obviously, there's different breeds and stuff, and we're just kind of looking at a more well-known generic breed. But we have a nice flat facing front here that kind of contrasts with the round edges of what we might be looking at for the simple shapes when we're drawing the head later. We'll get into details more about limbs and bones of the arms and legs and stuff like that in further videos, but a head is really nothing without the neck. So I do want to kind of point out that we do have a nice long spine vertebrae here going down, and it gives us a nice kind of thick shape right here leading into the body. So while our skeleton is what tells us a lot of the information of what we see on the outside, there's also a lot of information that we get from the muscle structures as well, right? So here we can see, zoom in on what we're focusing today. Sorry for this low quality picture, but it was the best I could find explaining house cat anatomy. We see a lot of the skull structure throughout the head because the muscles that go over the skull, same with humans, same with dogs, same with most animals, is very thin. It's a very thin muscular structure. So that shape kind of stays consistent. What we can look at is what it's telling us that happens with the neck here, which again is kind of enforcing that tapering effect where you have thinner here and then it tapers down wider. So what I'm saying is this point to this point is wider in length than this point to this point. And again, just to kind of reinforce this, with the front mouth shape, we do have that flat side, and then going into the head, we only have a slight curve here. Okay, there's no big distinction of like a hard kind of skull shape plane change there. And again, this all varies cat per cat, but looking at just kind of like the generic cats, the generic house cat, which is what we're learning today, you want to be a little more subtle with that curve when we're drawing realistically. So turning off our X-ray vision here, we can go in and look at a cat fully clothed with its skin and fur on, and just kind of start breaking this down, because we know that cats and other animals have fur. So a lot of what the structure of their skin shape is, we actually get a little lost in, because the fur kind of covers over it and it kind of softens out the edges. This is another reason why it's important to know what's underneath. So let's see if we can find some simple shapes here of how to break this down. One simple shape you might see a lot of artists use when they're drawing cats is they kind of come in with a square shape. So they think about this back part as a square, and then this part comes out like so. And you can build off of that structure. So learning the simple shapes is always going to be your best way to understand anything. You can break down anything into simple shapes. You just have to find what works for you. So if this doesn't work for you, you can always try other simple shapes. So let's say that square format doesn't look right to you. Well, let's try another simple shape then. Let's try a circle. And then we can come in and put a more angular face in there. Okay. And then again, you just kind of have that neck structure falling off, and we're thinking about that wide taper. So we know it gets wider at the bottom there. And so maybe that simple shape works better for you. You got to kind of look back, see what you like, think about what you could do. So if you were to draw this on your own off to the side, could you realistically recreate this? And do you feel like it would represent what you were trying to draw if you were going to be drawing a cat? So now that we kind of have an understanding of what we see underneath, one fun way to practice is you can grab a picture of a skull shape, a cat's skull shape, or whatever animal you're going to try to draw. Think about what you know a cat looks like and what we've just compared our anatomy references to, and see if you can overlay a drawing on top of that skull and see what the cat would look like if it were to, not just be the skull and we were to layer on some muscle and skin. So you want to keep this nice and loose. I'm going to use, the shapes that we decided that we liked. I can see a bit of what the information is telling me here to just kind of come over and find some of the shapes. The cool thing about this is that you can exaggerate this into whatever you want because you don't have a strict rule or a shape of what the cat actually looked like. So if you want to add something like a bigger mouth, a bigger nose, a flatter face, you can totally go for those things in the picture as well. Okay, so we know that the eye is going to be somewhere around here. And the whole point of this is just to be sketchy and kind of see if you can figure it out. The mouth might be somewhere in here. Maybe a little wider on the neck. And we can come in here and add in some ears. When you have a side-facing profile, remember that the first ear, the one that's closest to us, is going to go and break into this line. Okay, it's not going to sit on this line. It's going to go in and connect on the actual face shape. And then the one that's facing on the other side will be the one that's behind that line, and it's not going to go in here. This is kind of just a way of showing overlapping shapes. So you can work on that. Come in if you want to add some fur texture. But again, we're just kind of practicing, so we don't need to go too far with this. But there you go. Pretty simple cat shape. So let's give it the other one a try. So a bit trickier of a pose because we're looking at a different angle from the cat here. But just kind of try to approach it the same. Think about the simple shapes. I know that this is going to come off here. Their mouth shape doesn't stick out as far as per se like a dog's would, but it does protrude out from the face a little bit. So sometimes drawing that as its own shape kind of helps. This is good information because we know where the nose is going to be. Cats usually have some pretty defined cheekbones, but you can see here, sometimes their eye socket and the cheekbone is not actually connected, right? There's a space right there. It's kind of what gives them that protruding cheekbone shape. Okay, you can come in, add in your cat mouth shape. Now don't get too confused just because eye sockets are so wide. Doesn't mean that the cat's eyes are going to be that big too, right? It's just kind of, again, enforcing that cheekbone shape that we see a lot in the modern house cats. Okay, and then we know the neck is going down somewhere over there and somewhere over there. And we can throw in our ear. And then our ear that's facing closest to us. Cool. So rough sketch. But you can see even just like the addition of this cheekbone, because of the bone structure that we were looking at, it almost gives it a more cat-like face. I think that's a unique quality of cats that some people kind of forget when they're doing animal drawings and stuff like that, because in cartoons they round it off really cutesy and bubbly, but cats do have a pretty prominent cheekbone. All right, so we have a very special model today. The model that we have today was very gracious with her time. She decided to come in and help us, and it's my cat. I'm a kitty cat. So here she is. I have a couple pictures of her. Obviously, I own cats, therefore I'm taking pictures of them all the time on my cell phone. So we have plenty of references to choose from. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose 2 pictures that we're going to draw along together. No speeding up. We're going to figure out the simple shapes together, break it down, go nice and slow. And then I have a couple that I will kind of just speed up a little bit and just draw over so you guys can kind of... After you figure out the shapes with me, you can draw along and we'll just kind of work on it. Practice makes perfect. All right, so remember guys, we are just focusing on the head for today. So before we jump in, we can go in here and we can zoom in and maybe break down the photo itself into simple shapes. So first things first, we got to think about that first starting point, that first skull shape. So again, this is kind of up to your preference, but it could be the square. Maybe you can round off that square a little bit, or it could be the circle shape. Whatever you guys like best. Now we have to think about that next protruding shape, which we know is the nose and the mouth. So here you can kind of really see my cat's cheekbones popping right there. So that kind of lets me know that right around here is where we're gonna have that shape coming out like that. You can see this isn't a direct front-facing photo, so if I wanted to, I can give myself a little bit of a directional line too, if that helps. Okay, you can break down the eyes. This isn't going to be on an every cat kind of thing, but you can see here, at least in this photo, this right here is about the halfway point from here to here. So if that helps you to know the eyes, the lower eye is the halfway point, kind of similar to humans, then you can use that. And then of course we have the nice big triangle shapes, which are the ears coming out there. So having just broken this down into simple shapes, let's move over to our paper and see if we can draw this, putting these simple shapes practices to use for our own sketches. All right, so I have my reference off to the side there. I'm gonna go with the circle. I like the circle idea. I'm going a little more oval with my circle as well, so you guys can see. Remembering that the head shape is a little off to the side. It's a little tilted, not front facing. And then we're gonna come in with our structure, maybe a light indication of my cheekbone there. And what you want to do with the ground drawing too is you just want to keep it nice and loose. This isn't, you know, the perfection time. This is when you want to make the mistakes so that you can correct them later when you tighten up the drawing. All right, so we got the nose structure. You can say her other cheekbone is around here. Okay, I like that. I'm gonna flatten the top a little bit. I think I can use that halfway point, right, from here to here, to remember that that's around where the eyes start. Cat eyes always have a really nice leading line to them, and what I mean by that is you can take the nose, come up, and just curl it in. Curl it in. It creates that nice kind of cat eye shape. So if you find your nose, which we can say is right around here, just draw a nice simple triangle for now. We can always come in and detail it again later. Gonna go up and just do my nice curve there, and you come in and add in that round shape at the bottom, like so. There we go. Find the other one. One thing I do when I'm drawing, especially from references, is I always will check, like, okay, what's the distance from here to here versus the distance from here to here? And you can see that this is a smaller gap versus this is a bigger gap. So just if I'm trying to draw accurately according to my reference, I want to come back into my picture and check, okay, is this gap bigger than this gap? And for now, yeah, it is. You know, and that's one of the ways you can kind of just check yourself as you're drawing. It's another good thing about sketching, to take a break every now and then and look back. So it's an important reminder. So I'm going to go in and square off a little bit of these features here. Make some final choices about where I want the cheek shape to be. I'm going to lower my cat's nose a little bit here. I like that little almost frown face that she's making. Okay, remember my angle. And she has nice big ears, which we can see here. So I'm going to draw those in nice and loose at first. Remember, we can always tighten up later. And I can come in and start adding a little bit of details too. Got to catch that model-esque pose there that she was giving us. And I'm just going to draw a small indication with some simple shapes of what's going on below. I don't really want to go too far into it because, again, that's not what this video is about, but I do want to show some resemblance of body because I think floating heads just don't look correct. Kind of scare me a little bit. All right, so there we go. So we have a cat sketch, completely just started with simple shapes. You can see how messy I got. So now we can go in and tighten it up if we want to, right? Or we can, this is why I always use a different colored starting point. So that way, if I didn't have the ability to lower the opacity or whatever, like I'm doing right now, I could still draw on top of it with my darker pencil or my pen and make my final decisions. So I'm going to use the simple shapes that I did as a ground point. And now I'm just going to build off this structure, and we're going to keep the things that we like. You can get rid of the things that you don't like. Sometimes it helps too, when you're drawing animals, to think about the fur pattern. The fur pattern is the direction that the fur goes. This will help you to create a more realistic picture of whatever animal you're drawing, because you want to remember that in the line work you're doing, that the line work should go the direction the fur is going, right? So the easiest way to do this is to think about how you pet a cat. So if I'm petting a cat, I'm not going to push its fur down to its face, right? Because it's not going that way. You're going to push it back. Or not push it, but pet it. Similar with the cheeks, the fur goes back to the side. So you always want to be thinking about that when you are drawing in your cat shape here. Okay, so we got her nice mouth here. Just giving us that sass. She knows she's modeling for us today. Okay. Go in. Kind of give that nose a little more of a mushroom look to it, right? It's not just a straight up triangle necessarily. Maybe drew that a little big, but that's okay. See a little bit of her nose bridge there, and then we know that her eye comes in here. She has nice big green eyes. See a little bit of the white of her eye. Her iris there. Okay. Alright, so we're almost done here. Just go ahead and give her a little bit of the head. come in and add in a little more of this complex ear shape, but really the ear doesn't get too complex. It's just a nice rounded triangle shape. Add some of that fur in there though. And then of course this ear, which you can see it's lower than that ear, right? So I do kind of want to maintain that angle. This also will help enforce that she's not facing completely straight forward. And we see that her fur pops out there a little bit and then creates a nice shape coming down here. And there you go. Pretty basic, really quick. I know it's really sketchy, but that's what we're learning today. It's just how to come in with some simple shapes, make some lines. Don't be so tight to your drawing and start to figure it out. All right, so we just dealt with a front-facing view, so now we got a side-facing view. Of course, cats look many different angles, but we're just going to practice the two main ones for today because we don't want to overdo it. We want to be able to practice in our bounds here. So what are we looking at when we look at a side-facing view? So remember, we were talking about that slope here of the nose. We got that flat front part there. And again, I'm breaking it down to simple shapes. I can see that there's a bump structure here, but when we're talking about groundwork and fundamentals, we want to look past the little details first, come back to them later. So something I can see here is kind of like the separation of the skull shape here. You know, you got the head going back here with the curve to the neck and then this shape. So again, looking at kind of like that square shape again, but you can always come in and find the circle as well. So right, if you're looking for that circle, maybe something like that, and then you build this structure off of it, like so. So one thing we can really note here too is that this ear is going all the way in to the head. It's almost lining up with the eye there in terms of distance into the face. So we want to remember that, and then also that this ear is completely behind. Remember, overlapping shapes are always going to help to show 3 dimensions to your picture. All right, so let's give this one our best shot here. For this one, I'm going to start with that square shape we're talking about, see if we can do this. I usually like to start with circles, but it's always good to challenge yourself too. See if you can break yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes. So nice and rounded. I don't want to go too harsh with it. Seeing this shape, remembering it kind of comes down into a taper like that. So very important in all life drawing to always be referencing your reference, for lack of a better word there. Don't just say, I'm drawing a cat, look at the picture once, and then start drawing a cat from your imagination, because that's not going to help you to learn how to work from references and learn how to break things down from life. You got to analyze, you got to look at things, kind of think about what's happening, use some critical thinking. Okay, just add in this shape here. I think that's a fun shape. All right, and now I'm gonna kind of round this out. I know my sketch got pretty messy, but it's okay. I'm gonna work over it, right? So it's okay if it keeps getting messier. Don't see too much of that bottom part of her mouth from this angle because the camera is a little bit above her. And then of course we have that nose shape right here. And she's got a nice little eyebrow shape right there. And I know that the ear is nice and high coming in. Okay, so I can look where's the eye on the picture and relate it over to here. So the eye is around, kind of like where I just put that line actually. And just like a human eye, let's go in here and break it down real quick. Just like a human eye, you get that sideways V shape. Okay, so start with that V, and then you see the side of the eyeball there creating that round shape. And it still leads from the nose, okay? That's always a constant with cats, is that the nose leads straight into that skull shape. It's kind of a nice little cheat sheet for when you're drawing cats from your own imagination. So I know that her eye is going to be a little bit behind this line here, which is the beginning of that square shape I did in the beginning. And so I'm going to go in. I want it to be somewhere around here. So I'm remembering that the front part of that V is not as dramatically down, and then the bottom part is on more of a slant there. So for me, coming in, enforce that a little more. Okay, drawing that round shape. You see her iris back there. When I come in, I might make this a little bit bigger. I think she has a little bit bigger eyes. I can play around with that when I rework into it, but now we have that simple eye shape, so that's good. Ear structure here. Remember, their ears have a thickness to them. That's what gives them such good hearing. They kind of have to create like a cone shape, capture those sound waves. And then overlapping, 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 very important. Okay. Alright, and then I can see that her neck shape is kind of changing. Sometimes you can draw the volume that you're seeing, so like kind of drawing. She's wearing a harness, so you can really see the volume of her neck changing into her chest there. So that's pretty helpful. And it comes around, and then just kind of a little diamond shape there, rectangle, or can't even talk, triangle, and then whatever that shape. Not going too far into that detail. All right, so a little super messy drawing. Again, we were just starting with those basic shapes though. So let's see if we can fix this up and clean it up a little bit and make it look nice. So lowering it down for myself so we can see the drawing on top, and then I'm gonna grab my black color here and we are off. So forehead is sloping down on that angle, so trying to incorporate that into my drawing as well. I really like this little dramatic turn down right there. So I want to make sure I get that in my picture. That's going to be a part of her unique characteristic that's going to make it look like her and not like just any other cat. Okay, I'm going to decide to make my snout a little shorter than what it came out to in the drawing, which is a good thing. That's what we do the basic shapes for in the under drawing for, so we can come back in and make these next choices. It's a really good practice to help you not get so tight, not to think that everything you draw has to be perfect. I can see a little bit of her mouth coming up here. I'm going to kind of exaggerate and make up some of this information just to fill it in a little better. We get to do that as artists. We get to have our own artist interpretations. I know her cheekbone coming up somewhere around here. All right, and then let's make this eye nice and big. She looks like she's really curious about something. She just saw a bug or a bird or something, right? So we can really exaggerate that eye, play it up a little bit. Okay. I really like this little shape it's giving her eye right there. Little cat's eye kind of thing. And basically have this in here. Just gonna throw in the ears now. Keep that shape nice and round. Looking for the detail to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. Give them that nice bump behind the ear. That's where it connects to the muscle there so they can twitch their ear around as they hear things, right? Especially when they hear you opening up those snacks. That's when they really use those ears. And then we're gonna go in here just like that. And you can add the fur if you like, whatever kind of fur texture you want to do. We see a little bit of that fur coming out from there, so I'm gonna add that in. I think that's a little bit more of the angle. It's kind of her, some of her back coming into view. And we'll add that fluff of the fur kind of wrapping around the harness there. And there we go. We'll stop there with the simple shapes. So this is what we created. You can always go in and add a little more details if you feel necessary. Of course, you can always go in and add color and stuff too, but we're just trying to focus on the drawing aspect today. All right, and there we go with that drawing. So remember, nice and loose, sketch, have fun, practice, use those simple shapes. Find the simple shapes. I promise you it'll help you break down anything, cats especially included. So let's look at the other references here. I'll speed up the video a little bit so we can kind of get the process in, and you guys can draw along with me along the way. So just a reminder, guys, to make sure you're taking your time here. Remember, this is a YouTube video, so you could always pause or go back to the video another time and draw a picture. So if you really like one of these pictures more than the other, feel free to pause the video if it's going too fast for you and take your time. While we were drawing these though, and while I was doing research for this video, I found some really fun cat facts that I didn't really know about. So I'd love to share them with you guys while you're drawing away here. Alright, so a couple comparisons from cats to humans here. Cat's average body temperature is 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That is fever temperature for us, guys. We are at an average temperature of 98.6. Anything above that is considered a mild fever, and above 101 would definitely be a severe fever, or approaching a severe fever for sure. Their average heart rate is 120 to 140 beats per minute. That's double the average human heart rate. Our heart rates are about 60 up to 100 depending on health conditions, but the average would be 60 to 75 heartbeats per minute. The amount of breaths that they take per minute can be anywhere from 16 to 40 breaths per minute. You guys have probably seen cats breathe really slow when they're sleeping or calm, and then they can also breathe really heavy when they're starting to get worried or stressed or excited. Comparing that to humans, we do about 12 to 20 if we're resting, and it can be up to 40 to 50 under exercise or physical conditions. So one other interesting thing about cats, actually I have a few interesting things about cats. I got a list here. So cats are believed to be dwelled from a desert species, right? So they can actually take quite a high tolerance to heat. So while humans generally start to feel uncomfortable when their skin temperature passes about 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, cats show no discomfort whatsoever until their skin reaches about 126 degrees Fahrenheit or 52 degrees Celsius. That's pretty high, and they can tolerate up to temperatures of 133 degrees Fahrenheit or 56 Celsius, as long as they have access to water. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I would be cooking at that temperature. So cats conserve heat by reducing the flow of blood to their skin and lose heat by evaporation through their mouth. Cats have very minimal ability to sweat, kind of like dogs, and they have glands located primarily in their paw pads, and pant for heat relief only at very high temperatures, but they can also pant when they're feeling stressed or nervous. A cat's body temperature does not vary throughout the day. This is part of a cat's general lack of circadian rhythms and may reflect their tendency to be active during the day and at night. The circadian rhythm is what tells your body when it's time to go to sleep and when it's time to be awake. Alright, this is the most fascinating one to me because I've always heard that cats are pretty good with water, but I never really quite understood why. And so this says, and excuse the fact that this is going to talk about some bodily fluids here, but it says cat feces are comparatively dry and their urine is highly concentrated. Anyone who's ever smelled cat urine, if they've peed on your couch or anything like that in the past, you know what this thing is talking about when it says highly concentrated. And both of which are adaptations to allow cats to retain as much water as possible. Their kidneys are so efficient that they can survive on a diet consisting of only meat with no additional water. So what that's saying is that they're literally taking the moisture out of the meat that they're eating, because muscle is mainly water too, but they're just taking that simple moisture and they don't even need to go drink water for the rest of the day. That's pretty intense. That's pretty good efficiency of the kidneys right there. It also says that they can even tolerate high levels of salt, but only if they have a fresh water supply to keep them from dehydrating. Alright, the last fact I have here is not really a crazy one, but it's about cats swimming, and it says while domestic cats are able to swim, they generally don't want to enter the water, and it's because it quickly leads to exhaustion. So the fact that cats don't like water is simply just because they get tired really quick. I thought that was an interesting fact. Alright guys, thanks for joining my TED Talk there. This video is finishing up here in a few minutes. What I'm doing here is I just took one of my cat drawings here and I took it to finish. I added a little bit of color just to kind of show you guys how you can go from that simple shape to the sketch to a finished drawing. Very, very rough. Very fast. I don't know if I would consider this something that I would put in my portfolio, probably not. But just to kind of show you guys how, you know, quick you can knock something out with very limited color palette too. I went through and did this. So I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of this video and this process right here. If you guys have suggestions for more videos in the future, please let me know. We're going to go over the cat's body parts, moving down to the body and the limbs in later videos. If you guys have a specific animal that you want to see a video of how to draw about, please leave it in the comments below and we'll get to that. Thanks for watching, guys.